Hello, Endersword here again, this time with a video on the new Wrath of Khan arc, specifically Khan, the fleet commander himself. Looking at this mostly from a PvP focus, as that is his main drive in this, although he's got other abilities as well, but of course it tends to be the PvP that I am most concerned with. So just unlocked him, haven't actually upgraded any skills or anything yet, but just wanted to go through the skill tree itself and look at which things are going to give you the most yield. You're going to have to decide kind of which path to go down first in order to get the most out of it. So going to help with some of that. We're going to look through each one of these individually and determine how valuable it's going to be potentially in PvP, PvE, and which ones maybe aren't that worth getting or anything like that. So we'll just start at the top left. First things first, good way to start. Here we've got on combat start, increases Apex Shred against non-Armada hostiles for 3 rounds. This gets up to 50%. Usually when they say for 3 rounds, it means that it's cumulative. So if they list an amount and say it's for 3 rounds, then it tends to mean 50%, 50%, 50% for 3 rounds. So we'll ramp up to that 150, and then you just stay at the 150 for the remainder of the fight. So this one could definitely be useful on the waves. It could be useful with the new hostiles that we're going to have to fight. But obviously, since it is limited to hostiles, it's not going to have PvP effect, which of course is what we care about most. Warfare Concealed. This one is for the player with no honor, the cloaked player, if they want to increase their critical hit damage against other players while they're cloaked. Unfortunately, that's not going to have an impact in arena, as you can't cloak in that. However, in this case, you can in, incursions, you can in territory, you can in normal war situations, whatever. This gets up to 250%, which is actually quite significant damage to add to your critical damage. So this is definitely a good one to get. However, since it is cloak only, you're going to have to spend that resource to do it. You're going to have to be in a situation where you are cloaked. I never really love leaning into that. I'm glad that they didn't allow cloaking in things like arenas. So this is a limited resource, but it's a way to punch up maybe against a player that you wouldn't normally be able to beat or really take an advantage in a situation. The 250 extra damage is definitely going to help, but it's not going to be great in like a long-term, say, territory fight where you're going to have to fight for half an hour. It's kind of going to be a one and done sort of situation. So good, but not something I would necessarily prioritize first if you're going for maximum PvP benefit, particularly if you spend a lot of time doing things like arenas now. Here we've got Inferior Adversaries. On combat start, increases critical hit chance against non-Armada hostiles. This one, I believe, gets up to 15%, which is actually pretty decent, again, in the PvP category. So decent here, but again, not going to have the PvP benefits, but getting that critical hit chance. So many fights nowadays end in the first round, so having that higher crit chance in the first round is really the biggest thing that that matters before things like Hue kick in to help your critical chance later. So getting that out of the gate is always good, but again, it is a PvE sort of thing. To the last is going to be, again, for PvP. On round start, increase your Apex barrier against players for 6 rounds. This time they do say this ability can stack. I think that's true of the other one too, but in this case they do explicitly say it, and this is one of his always on abilities. So if you don't have him in seat, although you probably should if you're a PvP player, but maybe you just don't have enough slots yet, then this is going to work whether he is in seat or not. So it's going to increase up to 500 when it's maxed out for 6 rounds, meaning that it's going to build up to 3,000 over the course of the fight and then stay at that 3,000 amount for the remainder. The total benefit in this, even maxed out, is not really that great, especially with Shred now. That 500 is really going to be reduced down to 250 or lower, probably lower by the time more people get Con, more people have Giorgio, there's a Prime out there. Other things are going to provide Shred, so you're not getting a lot of this. The fact that it does stack is nice, that it's going to accumulate over the course of the fight. However, a lot of what this new fleet commander is going to do is actually shorten a lot of fights, and the increased prevalence of Apex Shred in general is going to increase the length of a lot of fights. So if you were having fights that were 4, 5, 6 rounds long, expect that to be going down more to 3. So even introducing something that lasts for 6 rounds may be good in the long run, but right now a lot of people are not going to be in a meta that is going that long, particularly if you're short of a level 70 epic, like very high tier player. You're going to probably be having fights that are shorter than this, but it depends on what level range you're in, what sort of ship range you're in. Look at some of your recent battle logs for how effective this could be, but again, good, but relatively minor. It's not going to be an absolute tide shifter, but definitely a good one to have in the long run, and the fact that it's always on is pretty decent. Here, Save Your Strength on combat start decreases the attack stats of the bridge crew officers on the enemy ship for 6 rounds. Doesn't apply in station defense. Now this sounds like it might be good, and the number gets really good, 1,000. This doesn't matter. This isn't worth anything. It may be a prerequisite for something, so you have to buy it anyway. But yeah, this isn't going to do a lot. The attack stat on your ship isn't that important anymore. A lot of people are either, one, that you're already so far over what you need to max out this ship stats. But even those ship stats itself, even if you were able to bump it down, it's just not really that determinative. The fact that it compounds for 6 rounds maybe is nice. I'm going to test this one out. Well, maybe I won't, because I don't want to spend points on it right away, but eventually we'll test it out. This is very similar to kind of how the Borg Queen and Gosa and those guys looked like they were good when they first came out. It was a big number, it sounded like it did something, but if you actually tested it out, even seeing the impact was hard to tell statistically. And in this case, I think we're in the same boat, that the amount that this lowers the actual damage that someone is doing is going to be small enough that I don't know that you're going to be able to you won't be able to see it from the noise from the normal min-max damage on a weapon outright. You might have to look at a lot of fights and statistically figure out what it's going to be in order to do that. So where this is going to have a bit of impact is if it pushes, if someone's really relying on that attack stat somehow, but it's just no longer the case anymore that you're not using officers anymore that are a multiple of an attack stat or anything. So it's just the base stats of the ship really that you're looking at, and I don't think this is going to be too impactful for that. But I'm going to test it later and see what it does, but it doesn't seem like it's going to do that much. This one, a little bit the flip of that, increase all officer stats by a fixed amount. In this case, 1,250% once you max it out. Again, it increases their stats based on the base of the officer stat. Those stats just aren't that super important anymore. Where they do kind of get good, like if you can bump things up to the next tier of that ship ranking level on your attack, health, and defense, that can be nice, but it's really not that noticeable, and you're much better off nowadays. People don't stack for stats anymore. You're going to use things based on your below deck officer abilities instead of the stats that they bring to it. So it just feels like these two are a bit outdated in the way that the game is. It's kind of a every little bit helps situation, but compared to some of the other things, it's definitely not what you're going to be going for first. The next 3 are actually pretty interesting here. I've been waiting for something kind of like this that is going to give an alternative way to apply a state to the enemy ship or your ship. It feels like that's been something that is due to happen for a while, and I expect it to happen from like a below deck PvP officer, but this is probably a decent way for them to do it, which is to do it conditionally on on a ship based on what is happening on your ship. So if you've got on this one, on round start, there's a chance to apply morale to your ship for 2 rounds if the opponent player is burning. So the idea here is if you're using, say, the battleship strike team against the opponent, then you set them burning, then it is going to potentially trigger morale on your own ship because the opponent is burning. So there's 2 caveats to this, which are kind of iffy. One is the percentage chance is not particularly high. So it caps out at 40%. So you have to apply burning, then on each round start, you've got a chance to apply it to your own ship, and it's only a 40% chance. So it's not a super reliable one. Over the course of a fight, yeah, it's probably going to go on in a 3-4 round fight. But the other big thing to this is it's not going to be at combat start. So you can't have anything that is relying on this state being there in order to trigger something and prevent something from happening. So you can't really rely on this, which I'll get into on the next one that comes up. But here, morale is going to trigger burning. Burning is going to trigger morale on your ship. This one is probably interesting because, so you're going to have to, I think, are these ones that are selectable? Usually when it's in this loop, you have to pick the one that you want. Obviously, you're going to pick the one that goes with the ship that you're most using in PvP. But if you are using a battleship as your main attack ship, this one's actually pretty decent because the burning is going to trigger extra isolytic damage because of the Starfleet Honors Star Nova building thing, which will give you an extra up to 20% isolytic. The morale that triggers will potentially give you an extra 20% isolytic from that same building once it triggers, but there is also a prime out there that gives you an additional 20% if you have morale in combat as well. So this one is probably the one that gives the most isolytic boost out of the 3. So if you are using a battleship, then this is the one that actually gets the most yield out of it. I wouldn't make my decision based on that. I would just base it on whichever the biggest ship is. But this one actually does have a slightly disproportionate impact compared to the other 2 because of that. That if you have that prime, and I actually don't, but if somebody was maining a morale-based crew, then you may have it, then it's going to make that a stronger one to pick. The next one here, this time, is on round start, a chance to apply burning to your opponent for 2 rounds if the opponent has hull breach. So again, you're going to use this if your main ship is an interceptor that you're using, and there is a chance that you're going to apply burning to them. Again, we're going up to 40% on the chance here, so we can't really rely on it, but it would be a nice bonus if it's there, and it could potentially trigger other things. Again, the burning itself is decent, that it's going to hurt their hull. But this one, in terms of actual impact, is probably the best. So, and for 2 reasons. So so first of all, summary, great aspiration on a round start, chance to apply hull breach to the opponent player ship for 2 rounds if your ship has morale. Again, same restriction, 40% chance. The reason why this one is actually so good, if you're someone that has gone the explorer route, if you really love your enterprises and stuff like that, 2 things. The main weakness to morale is that it cannot stop Icheb and Tuvok. If the only state you have in combat is the morale on your own ship, then Icheb and Tuvok will trigger every round, which does a ton more isolytic damage and a ton more apex barrier to the enemy ship to protect them. So you're very often seeing in PvP, if someone's trying to use Weiyun, Pawn, and Ransom crew, that they die to ships that are much lower than them, and the reason why is because someone's got usually Icheb at least below decks that is going to just ramp up the isolytic to an insane level. So you're getting a lot, I see a lot of the 100 billion plus Enterprise E's losing in combat to Crenshaws that are 20, 30, 40 billion, like much lower, 6, 7 tiers lower than them, because they have no way to defend against that. And that's true kind of all the way down. The morale crews have sort of gotten phased out because they don't apply a state and therefore do not mitigate the no state officers that you can use where some of the other ones do. The applying hull breach here does apply that state. There is still a drawback though, which is one, for all three of these, it says on round start, you have a chance to apply it if you've already got the state on. What that means is none of this can apply till round 2, because you're not going to apply your state until into that round. So this can't actually trigger at the beginning. It can only trigger once you've transitioned to round 2. Also then, the fact that it is only a chance means you're not going to reliably get it on round 2. You're not even necessarily reliably going to get it on round 3. So if you are missing this, then you're just kind of whiffing on it and it's not going to help you out. The other benefit, however, though, of hull breach is in terms of actual effect, it is the most impactful in terms of real effect. So if you've got morale on the ship, adding hull breach really amplifies your critical damage by 150%. So it's just going to take everything and multiply it by that extra amount, which is quite beneficial in a lot of combat. Burning is pretty slow. Morale doesn't really do too much for you, but this one actually has a real impact on the fight as long as you've got a crew equipped that is capable of landing those critical hits, and Con is actually going to help you do that a little bit over time. So there's potentially some other interesting combinations that you can do now to pump this up. So you're no longer necessarily going to have to use something like a Freeman crew on an Explorer and rely on triggering hull breach there. You could potentially go with the morale crew, find another way to get crits on there, and then kind of use this to enhance that. So breathes a little bit of life into Explorers, but unfortunately the fact that the reliability is so low does limit that. But really objectively here, you're just going to choose the one that goes with the ship that you've got the highest, and that's going to be the best benefit for you at the moment. We get to Con's activated ability here, and here it is increasing base critical damage against players when activated. This goes all the way up to 400%, which is actually quite impactful. However, it is again kind of a one and done situation. Similar to the Lorca ability, for those that have that or have leveled up this skill, it's going to be an activated ability that you choose to activate, and it's going to be set to a certain amount of time. I've heard that that time is 5 minutes, so actually fairly decent. You could use it for, say, pretty much most of an arena match. You could use it in a takeover, something like that, in a clutch situation where you want this applied. It should apply to your whole fleet, apparently, so it's not like on a single ship or anything. Will increase the critical damage there, particularly if you're a interceptor focused person. This is going to help you out, but given that this is an activated ability with a cooldown, only a short period of time, there's probably other ones that I would target first instead of going for this. So I think a lot of people, when Lorca came out, saw that activated ability, put a lot of points into it, and then realized, hey, I can only use this for 1 minute every 8 hours. That's not hugely impactful. So if you want to be a steady fighter for the duration of like a whole incursion or something, this is not necessarily the way to go. There may be better things that you can put points into for the time being, but it is kind of a interesting punch-up mechanic that you could use to surprise someone from time to time if you just need that extra little bit of punch. The next one under the Extremist tree is the game's not over. On combat start, increase your isolated damage when defending on your station. So in this case, basically defense only is going to increase it by 50%. You've probably got a lot of other officers on your station defense crew that are going to help you out here that are going to make that multiply by a fair bit. So that could be fairly impactful on the station defense side. Not something I tend to focus too much on, but if you are, again, an incursion player and you're used to, hey, I'm trying to raid someone, but a bigger player comes and smashes me, I want to be a little more invulnerable to that, then that one can definitely help out in that sense. So I think it's going to have a certain niche. It's not going to be perform miracles, it's only 50%, but that 50% again gets multiplied by the cascade that you have and so on. So it's definitely gonna be more than that on the actual log at the end of the day. This one, again, in a PvE mode, on combat start, increases Apex Barrier against non-Armada hostiles by 200. This one going up to 2,000. These ones are pretty decent. So again, if you're a PvE person, which I guess we all kind of have to be, this is a good one to get. I'm probably not going to unlock it right away as I'm going for the PvP stuff, but definitely good. Your Apex Barrier adding up over time is going to make you more and more invulnerable, and really in the PvE situation, a lower number is more impactful, just because your opponent, one, doesn't usually have shred or anything, and a lot of legacy opponents simply weren't designed to deal with Apex Barrier in the first place. So getting a decent number up there is going to make a big difference in what your survivability is and what you're able to do. If you're trying to push things like Q trials and stuff like that, that's definitely going to help out if you're stuck there. Space Seed on round start decreases opponent's critical damage for 8 rounds when you are mining with a surveyor. This ability can stack. That's kind of fun in a way. So it's going to reduce their critical damage by, if you max this out, 80% per round for 8 rounds. So you can get up to a point where this is decreasing it by 640%. But if you are currently mining with a surveyor, so you can't just use it on a surveyor and go around killing with the thing, you have to be on a mining node to do it. This kind of, I think it's maybe meant to work with like the auto defenses on surveyors, because it delays combat by 8 rounds. This would actually have a chance to ramp up to its maximum value before the person can even hit you. But I think this sort of thing is pretty gimmicky and silly, especially since people have a critical damage floor now anyway. Most people are going to be reduced not less than 100%, and a lot of people are going to be at 200, 300, 400%, depending on whether they've got some of the optional stuff that you're able to grind out or some of the things that you're able to buy. You can get up to about a 400% floor at the moment. So really, does this do anything? It basically is just going to prevent someone from killing your miner quicker. It's not going to prevent them from killing your miner, not realistically. So only if someone was really trying to punch up, they were trying to kill a miner that was like 15 levels above themselves with a pretty weak ship, maybe it's going to come into play. But yeah, I don't think overall. And the fact that it's focused on critical damage means that they're still going to be just fine with another ship that's not relying on critical hits in the first place, like an explorer or battleship or something like that. So I think this one's a little silly, but it's there. It kind of fits the theme of Con, I guess, but I think that one's a little bit silly that you can skip probably till the very end, to be honest. Here from Hell's Heart, when you land a critical hit on a non-Armada hostile, increase your critical damage for 3 rounds, and this ability can stack. So this one's actually pretty interesting. Again, PvE only, but it's going to increase your critical damage by up to 25%, and I think it's going to do it for every hit that you land for up to those 3 rounds. This combined with a lot of the officers that increase your critical hit chance, the other con ability that we just saw that increases your critical hit chance, could actually quite significantly increase the critical hit damage you're doing against hostiles. There's also other officers out there now that do increase the critical hit damage over time as well. So if you're really looking to do a critical base build and really punch up against something, this could be interesting. It's not going to be something that's super applicable in your day-to-day fighting, where you're not usually going to be going that deep in rounds. And I don't think out of the gate this is a huge increase. 25% out of the gate is not a lot. Over 3 rounds, maybe that's building up to a few 100%. Not even really a few. Maybe if you're using a cube, close to 250%, something like that. But yeah, it's not going to be earth-shatteringly different. If you stack it with other things, it gets there, but I don't know if I'd want to build entirely around that, and I don't think that that is a huge priority at the moment. However, this one is. So on combat start, increases your isolytic damage against players 4 or 5 rounds to 100%. This is insane. The way that this reads, at least, would be that it's 100% damage per round, 4 or 5 rounds, so ramping up to 500%. Nothing in the game is in the ballpark of this thing. This is now the most powerful research in the entire game, bar none. There's nothing else that even comes close to this power. The fact that it works whether he's in seat or not is also insanely powerful. And that it acts right away. Like this, if there is one skill in the entire tree to get, this is the one to get. Right away, it's going to make you buy 1 level of the stupid space seed thing in order to unlock it, but then you're going to want to max this out. This is just, it's just a little dumb. To be honest, I often will pitch the idea that, hey, you don't need to be a paid player to do well in PvP at this game. You just have to focus on the right things, grind the right things, get the right officers through, you know, wave store and things like that. Unfortunately, the release of Con today, that is absolutely out the window. If you don't buy this, you're going to lose. There's no if, and, or but about this. It's attacks on PvP. If you do not have this, and there's been forbidden tech that's been like pretty strong, there's been chaos tech that's been pretty strong, there's been certain primes that are pretty strong that add some isolytic damage, add resistance to crits, things like that, that certainly are influential. This isn't influential, it's just a decider. If you don't have this, you lose. That is it. And unfortunately, I think more than anything else in the game up to this point, that's what this is. So I don't know. I know that there's a free-to-play path for Con from day one. I don't know how long that's going to take. You need 200 shards of the guy. I'm not sure exactly how easy that path is going to be. And I know there is a chance that you're going to get a miraculous unlock or something on it, but you're still going to then have to get skill points, level them up, whatever. But I think this one, this is jumping the shark a little bit. This is so ridiculously powerful. That, yeah, you can't compete without this. So if you're someone that's waiting on this, unfortunately, you know, to go the free-to-play route, you're going to be in for a tough couple of months if you like to do stuff like arenas. If anyone else has bought this, you lose. That's it. And I think even many ops levels below, adding on hundreds of isolytic damage to what they're doing is just kind of crazy. So... well, we'll see how that plays out, but I think that one is a little bit of a step too far, and it dwarfs the rest of the entire tree. This one, Hardened Veteran, on combat start, increases Apex Barrier in Arena against players. So this one gets up to 4,500%, certainly impactful. I don't really love even the idea of things that only work in Arena, or only work in a takeover, or only work like during an incursion or something. I kind of feel that PvP is one of those things that should be kind of universal. It's if I can beat your ship in normal space, I should be able to beat it in the arena. And I know they've got extra things like favors there that give extra hull health, extra shield health, things like that, but that's not super impactful. This kind of borders on being pretty impactful. Having an extra 4,500, I know that's going to get shredded down, but having something that works in arena but that doesn't work in normal combat, I don't love that as a direction. I think that's fine when you do it on PvE. This works in wave defense but not in normal. But I think in PvP it's kind of annoying that you could fight someone in arena and win, but fight them in normal space in the incursion the next week and lose in that same matchup. But it is what it is. It's there. It will be pretty impactful. This one, again, same thing, but way worse. Increases isolytic damage while in arena. This one going up to 50%. Again, quite impactful given that this gets multiplied by your isolytic cascade, but having the extra isolytic damage in arena is going to skew it. The real reason I don't like either of these is not just because it makes you stronger or weaker, but that it changes the calculus on things like fight length. So if you're out in your server or in incursion and you're used to fighting, okay, I know when I get my my Kelvin up against this person's whatever coroner, I know that the fight's about this long, and I know if I do this, then I'm gonna win, or I know that this officer has time to kick in, I know that Gul Dukat can build up this many extra shots, things like that. This changes the math on it when you go into the arena. So it becomes like a simulated fake environment. It's not representative of your day-to-day PvP. It becomes this hyper version of it, where now you're suddenly doing a lot more damage in arena than you were, but suddenly you've also got more defense, you've got more hull, you've got more shields, not that shields matter, in that context when you don't in the other. So when you're comparing one to the other, you're testing in your day-to-day, that test is not going to carry over to the arena, and I don't really love that as a mechanic. I get why they do it, but I don't like it. But if you're not someone that does arena, you can skip these. But if you don't do arena, you probably don't love PvP that much anyway. Every contingency anticipated. When you are hit by a player weapon, increases your isolytic defense for 5 rounds. Doesn't trigger during station defense, and the ability can stack. So this one, every time you are hit by a player weapon, it increases your defense. This one gets up to 15%, but of course that is 15% per weapon that you are hit by. This can have a drastically different effect depending again on your level and the type of ships that you're fighting. If you're fighting ships like the Cube a lot that fire a lot of weapons, this is going to add like 60% isolytic defense to your stuff every round, and it's going to stack for the duration of that fight. If, however, you're fighting something like the 70 epics, which fire like once, then this isn't going to be as impactful over the course of that fight. And it's again another thing that the longer it goes, the better it is. So the longer the fight, you're more likely to get the benefit of that 5 rounds of buildup. If you're dying in round 1, 2, 3, or killing someone in round 1, 2, 3, then it's not going to be as impactful, not going to have the time to build up. But it's reasonably okay. I mean, it's certainly a good one to have. And what things tend to do in this game is drift towards really, really quick 1, 2, 3 round fights, and then over time they tend to increase the defense ability a lot, and then they introduce a new thing that gives you lots of new offense. So it seems to do this ebb and flow between the two. There was one point at which I was typically getting fights that were more than 30 rounds long. That's when they first introduced things like the Apex Barrier, the Mirror Cruise, things like that. You were suddenly getting these fights that were way, way longer than you were ever getting before, and then very quickly that turned around, that there are ways to invalidate that crew, there was ways to out damage it. Apex Shred finally comes out to completely get rid of the Mirror Crew as a concept, basically. So it tends to go long and then extremely shorten, and then obviously as they add more offensive capabilities like isolytic damage, that usually tends to outpace the defense that they put in for it. So I think that's the case here, but this is definitely a good one to get, but not absolutely the primary one to get. This one increases cost efficiency of ship repairs. Hey, this only matters if you're losing. But certainly this is always just kind of universally good. At this point, going up to 300%, it's noticeable. I don't know that I've put a whole ton of stock into these, but if you're struggling with things like titanium dilithium, then this can definitely help out with this. I find the ones that increase ship repair speed maybe a little bit better, but if you're having trouble with the RSS, this is the way to go. If not, you can kind of take a pass on that one for the time being and make it one of the later skills that you fill in. Here, not quite domesticated. On combat start, it increases the Apex Shred against players. Does not trigger on a station defense. This one again is always on, so whether he is in seat or not, this is going to trigger. This one gets up to a pretty impressive 100%. And this is what I most anticipated. When they said Khan is coming out and there's a PvP fleet commander, I'm like, he's going to have Apex Shred out the ass. and this is now the single biggest source of Apex Shred that you can get. I guess he ties a maxed Giorgio, but I don't think many people have a maxed Giorgio at the moment, whereas you could just max this right now if you wanted to. So yeah, that 100%, it's really cutting into the effectiveness of the Apex barrier. You're gonna have a standard player out there now. Like if someone's at all PvP focused, even light spender mode, they're going to have 175% Apex Shred right out of the gate. That's pretty impactful. So your Apex barrier is losing a lot of its effectiveness there, which creates a weird arms race, and it starts to create a weird situation of when do you move away from your Apex below deck officers and into other things like, say, hull healing, increased offense, or maybe isolatic defense, something like that. So where does the crossover happen? The interesting thing, however, about the way Apex Shred works and how Apex Barrier works is because Apex Barrier is kind of diminishing return, it's actually the first few points that matter the most. So weirdly, as you lose it, gaining a little bit back actually is more impactful than if you were to do it later on in that number. And it's true and not true in a few ways, but it's weird, the relationship between the two, that it's essentially the meeting of two diminishing return curves, and that has a strange effect. They're both essentially efficiencies, and they're pushing back against each other. So there's still some opportunity there for Apex Barrier to be really impactful. However, I think that the game designers, Scopely, they don't think ahead. That's always very apparent. But I think they realized that they went overboard with Apex Barrier, and you were getting people, particularly with opportunities like Mira or Hura, to go into like 200,000 Apex Barrier, and it was getting a little crazy. They tamped that down a lot. So this really invalidates the Mirror crew. Mirror crew was in the meta for like 2 weeks. Like it became like the strongest crew for a very short amount of time, and then immediately fell off a cliff on that. Even by the time they released the second officers, Mira Kira and all that stuff, if you ever see someone using Mira Ezri or Mira Troy, let alone Kira, go hit them, because they have no idea what they're doing. Like that is your target. That is the weak person at the poker table. So yeah, those officers came out and they were already obsolete. And Mira is kind of in that category as well. But Apex Shred really puts a nail in that coffin to end it all. But definitely that is one of the huge ones to get. The two biggest so far are these two, the isolatic damage and the Apex Shred. Buried Alive increases base hull health point for all your ships. Goes up to a big number, seems like a big number. This big number is not that big in reality. For myself, if I was to get the 1500% extra hull health, in reality, that's probably about 5%. So that's the actual impact I would see. If your level is lower, it's going to scale down to that. But remember, this adds on to what your hull health bonus already is. You can kind of figure out what that is by playing with certain researchers or certain officers that increase your hull health, checking it before and after, and you'll get a sense that like 140% hull health increase is in reality like 1%. And in this case, that'll give you an idea of where you're at. But the higher level you are, the more hull health research you have, the less impactful this is going to be. But it's not nothing. It's a 5% if that's what it's going to be for me. It's still something. And I know a lot of people just like seeing the power number on their ship go up, whether it impacts it or not. Hey, the extra 5% will increase that number. It's not going to have much combat effectiveness. Very rarely do you end a PvP fight or even a PvE fight with 5% hull left and it actually made the difference. But, if you like that sort of thing, go for it. This one, though, definitely better. You task me. On combat start, increases critical hit chance against players for 4 rounds, meaning that it is cumulative. This is crazy. So the fact that this is going to increase by 50% per round over the duration of the fight is crazy. It's basically a Garrick for free on every ship, always. Like, this is nuts. It's hard to underestimate this because they've really, over the past while, put in so much crit chance reduction things available to people that if you're not using an interceptor, you can basically just write off the idea of critting. Even if you're using crit officers like Honor Guard Worf, there's enough anti-crit chance in the game to take Honor Guard Worf and push it down to 0 anyway, even though he's a plus 100%. But here, if you're now using officers like that, or using no officers in the first place, this is going to build up to a 200% bonus over the course of the fight, and nobody has a negative 200% crit chance modifier against you, plus you've got other research and whatever. So yeah, this one's quite impactful. It's a little bit crazy. The interesting thing will be to see here if this actually hurts the Interceptor's dominance, because the Interceptor relies on Garrick pushing it to 100% crit chance. If this happens on all ships anyway, then Garrick just gets you there slightly faster, but isn't actually super unique. So that's going to be interesting. Suddenly you're now going to be able to crit on the other two ships, whereas before you weren't really able to. And given that maybe the idea that morale can be coupled with hull breach to give a state to mitigate some of each heb a little bit, is that going to bring pawn back into the meta to now actually counter crits? I don't really think so. I don't think it's going to be that impactful, but it is interesting that suddenly this will make crits viable on some of the other ships, and it may somewhat weaken how important Garrick is on the Interceptor crew. You could actually see a shift away from that sort of thing into something else as this goes, and this one has a bit of a impact to it. But again, it must accumulate. So this is going to be the case over 4 rounds to get to that 200%, but you're going to get that 50% right away. And depending where you are in the research, that could actually be quite impactful. Coupled with Garrick or something, it means that pretty much any Interceptor or anyone using Honor Guard Worf is critting like damn near 100% out of the gate, absolutely off the jump of combat. So that could be interesting there as well. But I think that's definitely one that you're going to get. So far, it's basically these 3 yellow boxed ones is going to be your main focus. This one against on round start against players, chance to repair 5% hull damage taken in the previous round when max fortified by the US Titan A. It's a chance, so the chance does get up to 100% though, so it's ultimately not a chance, but it's only 5%. The 5%'s good. Hull repair is really, really good. But the fact that it's not the hull repair percentage that increases, it's the chance of it that increases, and it's not fortified, it's max fortified that you need to be. Max fortified is pretty expensive, long cooldown. Again, you could use this to win 1. It's not even going to be enough for you to like win if you were not already very close. It definitely buffs up. It makes the max fort better. This should almost be a research for the Titan A itself, as opposed to a fleet commander. But yeah, 5%, it is good, don't get me wrong, that's really good. But the fact that the condition to trigger it for how good it is disproportionate. It's not that good. I think what they're doing is, because PvP has gotten to the point where max fortification's main benefit used to be the fact that it recharged your shields. And it still does, but nobody gives a shit about your shields anymore because of the quantum slipstream drive and because of ST Una. I'm bypassing your shields anyway. I don't care what your shield is. So here it's transferring some of that to the hull repair instead, but not nearly as strong as that shield repair was. It was basically an infinite shield before. Now it's not. It's a minor increase to your hull repair. Impactful, but not nearly as impactful as it would have been. And again, you need max fortify, which you're not going to have a lot of the time. You may, if you're in a takeover, something like that. Your alliance is good at setting them off and stuff like that. Fine technique: when you land a critical hit on an opponent player, decrease their isolated defense for 2 rounds. Doesn't trigger in station defense. This one you do need to be on duty, and it lowers it by 30%. However, once again, it's lowering it per weapon hit that you land the critical hit on. So if a weapon lands a critical hit, it's going to multiply that, and then it's going to accumulate that for 2 rounds. So again, if you're using something like a cube, which is going to fire like 6 times in those 2 rounds, and you're going to hit a lot of those shots as critical, let's say all 6, then you're potentially lowering them by 180%. That's reasonably impactful. It's not crazy. It's not out of this world. That's going to be a pretty decent hit, but it's not going to be nuts. As you get to the 70 epics, again, that only really fire once in the round, this is going to be less impactful. Most ships don't fire like 6 times in 2 rounds, but depends on what ships you're using, what sort of matchups you're in. So this is a good one, but it's not the absolute strongest or anything. So maybe grab it a little bit later. This one, however, when you land a critical hit on an opponent player, increase your Apex Shred for 2 rounds. And this one gets up to a 15% bonus, but again, it's going to stack. So now if you're shooting them 4 to 6 times, you're now you're increasing your Apex Shred by 60%, by 90%, whatever. That gets pretty impactful, a lot more impactful than the corresponding isolytic damage is going to be. So I think out of these 2, this is the one to go with. You don't have to pick, but obviously I would do that one first if you were going to level one of these up. But both good, something you're going to get in the long run. But if I had to pick, you're going to take that Shred one first, since it's going to cut through everything. The other one's only going to apply an isolytic, and the amount is going to be a lot less in terms of actual impact. You're no match for me. On combat start, increases your explorer's damage against players for 10 rounds. I don't even care what this number is. This doesn't do anything. Anything that's like, I increase your base damage, whatever, fuck off. That doesn't add up to a lot. The fact it's cumulative, I guess, is good, but this is kind of like people would look on like Forbidden Texts and be like, oh, it increases the base damage by 3,000%. I'm like, yeah, you've got 50,000% as your normal base damage. The fact that it's cumulative brings it into good if the fight goes long enough, but you're almost not gonna notice it. If you look at round 1 and round 10, you're probably gonna see a difference. If you look at round 1, round 2, I don't even think you're gonna be able to visually see a difference. You're gonna have to do a bunch of fights, statistically figure out the difference. I think it's gonna be that small, but it's there. You're again going to select this for whatever your ship is. Anything that improves base damage, I guess, is good, but they always just make the number sound bigger than it really is, because it's not really that big of an impact. That's like a 5% impact, but 5% impact for 10 rounds, but you're not going to fight for 10 rounds, realistically. It's not, the fights aren't going to be that long because of all the other things they're adding for crits and limiting their defense and everything like that. So this could be something that creeps into being good later, but by the time later happens, you're going to have even more base damage stuff. So obviously you've got one of these for each of the ship types. So you're just going to pick the ship type that applies best to you and use that, and you can always switch later. This one, the deepest cut. On combat start, increase your critical hit damage for 4 rounds against players. Always on, so again, don't even need him in seat in order for this one to work. 50% is the base, 200% is what it ramps up to. Like, once again, this is nuts. Like 200% per round, stacking to 4 rounds. If you don't, critical damage is going to be absolutely out of control. They've increased, which is so weird to me, that interceptors are already the king. Now they're the absolute emperor of the universe. they've made it so that they're going to crit 100% of the time directly out of the gate. They're going to do tons more damage. They're going to do tons more isolytic damage with it. There's going to be no way to mitigate the chance of them critting. Nothing can lower it below 0. Even using like pawn on an enemy ship meant to counter it is not going to do anything to it. There's no way to stop an interceptor from critting you. It's also going to increase crits on other ships, but the interceptor is 100% out of the gate every time, always. That's going to be pretty nuts. And I don't know why they're doing this. They've spent the last year or more reducing that. This is a complete repeal of that position, and now they're like, crits are the best thing ever, and everyone should crit. And what you're gonna get fights that are super short really soon after this. And once again, if you don't have this stuff, like if you don't have this fleet commander, someone's gonna be doing 100% more isolytic to you. They're gonna apex shred the life out of you. They're gonna be doing way more critical hit damage to you, and they're gonna do it with 100% accuracy. There's never been a more pay-to-win thing in the game. I don't think there ever has been. And yeah, there's a free-to-pay path. That's what they're going to hide behind on this. But if you're taking that free-to-play path and you like PvP, sorry, for the next 3-4 months, you're screwed. There's no competing. It's game over. If you buy this thing and select those 4 nodes and max them, you've won against anyone else that doesn't have this for the foreseeable future. And I don't think there's ever been a shift quite to that extent. I think like when the Tantalus field came out, it was a pretty big shift over, but that is nothing compared to what this is going to do. This is just a completely determinative thing that there's no way to fight back against this, but it is what it is. That's what it is. The last one here to look at is Best Served Cold. On combat start, increase your isolytic damage when attacking player stations. This one's kind of funny. The reason that we think that this exists is because they screwed up the Janeway's Pocket Watch, so that the Janeway's Pocket Watch, which is meant to decrease your opponent's isolytic damage by 40%, accidentally triggers in a station defense for every ship and every gun that you have in the station. So if you've got 8 ships docked and 6 guns, it triggers 14 times, meaning that it's going to reduce someone's isolytic damage by 560%. No one has more than 560% isolytic damage, so essentially it's going to reduce it to 0 when somebody has a maxed pocket watch and they've got everything in dock. This seems to then counter that by simply adding back the 500%. So instead of fixing the bug, they simply added this onto it. And now if someone doesn't have the pocket watch, then they're really screwed. And if somebody does have it, all it's really doing is countering out almost exactly what the pocket watch does, minus 60%. So it just takes everything back to the way it was before without them having to actually code any fix to the problem. They're just going to leave it the way it is. This mitigates it and nothing happens. Everything's fine, even Steven, perfectly balanced as all things should be. So yeah, this is the preview of Con. Hopefully that's helpful in kind of planning out what your steps are going to be. I kind of highlighted what the most important ones are going to be here, which is largely this, 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 and this. So really easy to remember. It's basically the 4 surrounded in yellow. Some of the other ones are good, but I would probably put them a little bit later. PvE ones, I'm going to save for a while, go PvP first, but definitely with the new content and things like the solo waves that could help out with if you're struggling with any of that. But if you're PvP focused, obviously leave that, only get things that are required for prerequisites. And some of the stuff like this where you know, you're choosing your ship and stuff, just keep in mind that if you're investing in that, but then in a month or 2 you're going to switch to a new ship of a different type, then you're going to have to reinvest in it again. So maybe hold off on those ones too. And then some of the ones that are nice, maybe optional, unless you're really struggling with like RSS, I wouldn't go for this sort of thing out of the gate. you know, focus on some higher priority stuff. And the one that's going to be the flashiest, the activated ability, again, I'd probably hold that till later. It tends to be, because it's on the bottom row, tends to be really expensive to upgrade in the first place. So yeah, you can get trapped down that road and it doesn't really help you all that much in the end, even though this number is good. Like, it's definitely good, but it's like a one-shot sort of thing. You're going to get to use it once in the whole arena thing. I'm assuming, I obviously don't have it yet, I'm assuming it has a similarly long cooldown, like 8 hours or something ridiculous to it. So you're going to basically win that one fight and that's the end of you for the day. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, there's a couple things in here that are exactly what I expected, which is the Apex Shred. I expected this. I expected that sort of thing. I did not expect the extent to which they would increase isolytic damage, an insane amount of isolytic damage that they're adding on to it. Like, it's hard to fully explain how ridiculous this is in context, given that it multiplies. Almost everything else in the game has a diminishing return. Isolytic damage has a multiplicative return, and I feel like there's never been really addressing that. They keep increasing the number, which they usually do in most cases, but they can increase the number because the return is actually diminishing. In isolytic, it's already multiplying and you're increasing the number, so it's like this exponential crazy return that you're getting off of it. And particularly since we're now having a lot of these abilities cut into someone's isolytic defense as well, it used to be, well, this is getting out of hand, but most people are defending 92+% of isolytic damage anyway, so it's kind of, we're mitigating it faster than we're gaining it. We're not. We're gaining it way faster than anyone can mitigate it. Everyone's really already hit that plateau and how much they can defend against it, and now there's things that are going to reduce how much you can defend against it. So that's a little bit crazy. And again, this complete, absolute 180, it felt like they were on a crusade against critical hits and critical hit damage for so long. Everything was reducing it more than it was adding to it. All the premium dust stuff, all the extra primes abilities were reducing, lowering critical hit damage. Now we're suddenly increasing it through the roof, in addition to increasing the chance. Just like, and it so invalidates stuff they just did. They just came out with a chaos tech that lowers people's critical hit chance by 30% per round. Well, what's the point of that now? Who's going to get that now? So it doesn't really do much to you. Yeah, it seems like a really weird direction. I expected this to completely change the meta, introduce a new thing, introduce a new concept that would kind of flip things around. It weirdly feels like it's locking the meta in and absolutely setting it in stone, that critical damage and critical hit crews are the only way to win. And I kind of expected them to push back a little bit on shield bypass, because that's become so dominant that shields are irrelevant in the game. That if you get a quantum slipstream or you get ST Una, then you're just ignoring someone's shields pretty much anyway. So if you don't have that, and again, that's kind of an only paid thing right now. Una you can get for free, but the slipstream, which you can put on any ship, you can't get unless you buy it at the moment. That's a pretty big impact, and then to lock in that meta feels really weird. So I don't love this. Again, I always used to argue that there were free-to-play ways for you to compete in PvP. This has disproved me. In a single swoop, this is more pay-to-win than literally anything that's ever been released before. Hopefully the free-to-play path is, not that long, but I don't know. I think you're in for a few months of trouble before people start to unlock this and catch up on this, and I'm sure that they're going to add more stuff to it as well over time. So good luck in those. If you do buy it, just keep in mind too, it's not a case of, okay, I'm going to make the $100 purchase and then I'm good. It's going to be a case of, I'm going to make the $100 purchase, then I'm going to need skill points to really max out the things I want. I'm probably going to want the extra fleet commander spot in order to slot him in. So you're probably really looking more at $200 to $400 to get to the point that he's serviceable. And if you really want to fill everything out, then you're spending a lot more than that. So keep that in mind, that whenever there's kind of that hidden cost of like, here's the unlock, but then to actually do anything with it, I need to do this and I need to do this. So if you're going to do that, go for it. But if not, just keep that in mind. And again, even if you're taking the free-to-play path, remember that the free-to-play path is not necessarily going to give you the skill points, the seat unlock, etc. So there may be additional hidden costs, even though they say, well, you can get this free. You can't necessarily get all of it free, or it's going to take a lot longer for you to be able to accumulate that up. I don't know the pace of that yet, but whatever. Hopefully that is helpful to people. I feel weird because I'm like, I bet in the right direction. I've built interceptors, and I always feel the meta seems to come back to interceptors, and I think this has locked it in even more again, but I feel that this is unfair. I don't like that it's so strong. I don't like that it's so strong and something you just buy. But we'll see how it plays out over the next few months. There may be other things that come in, whatever, that invalidate this. There's always more and more power creep, so maybe something ends up making this not look that good a month from now, something like that. But there you go. Thanks for watching. I never usually say, but like and subscribe. I come out with videos at least once every 2 or 3 months, but hopefully they're worthwhile when I do. So thanks for watching.